Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.
Everybody, thanks for the big giant studio audience that I have here. Thanks everybody. Welcome to Kobylt and Friends. What's up with Kobylt and Friends? I have a really terrific show for you guys today, and I'm glad to introduce my first guest, Lisa Goich.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow.
Can you tell?
It's like I'm at Wembley Stadium or something there. Wow.
Don't you feel really important? I mean,
that was a big applause.
Without that applause, and our audience seems to grow. Kurt, my board op, every single week. There's more and more people. It's just we're just gaining in popularity every week, aren't we?
Exactly. We're cramming a lot of people in this studio.
We really are. It's a tiny little place, but we pack them in. So I'll tell you, today's show is about writing your memoirs. And we've had Lisa on before, and we also have another woman on. Her name is Lisa De Benedictis. She's also an author and a wonderful editor, author, and all sorts of titles that I could give her. Her name is Beth Bornstein Dunnington, and she will also be with us to be talking about book writing. And I would like to talk first to Lisa and introduce you and talk a little about you. And I got to know you first and foremost through the Grammys, because you were our go-to girl.
Yes.
Every year I'd be like, we need tickets. And every year, here's mine, by the way. Okay. And thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but other than the fact that you work with the Grammys, you're an author, you've been on the radio, you have done so much in your life. So why don't I just introduce you and you tell us some of the things that you've done in your life.
Okay. I started off my big illustrious career as a copywriter in advertising. I was a journalism major in college, and I started off in copywriting. I was in advertising for about 15 years, writing and producing ads. That was my business. And then I went from that. I decided at one point, you know what? We wrote a lot of humor advertising.
Were you in New York then, or were you out here?
Detroit.
Oh, you were in Detroit. Okay, because you're from Detroit.
Yeah, from Detroit. But we did a lot of stuff in New York while I was in Detroit. We did a lot of commercials and stuff in New York. Then I decided, you know what? Somebody said, you should try your hand at stand-up, for comedy writing, because that's basically what we did in advertising. So I put together a little act, and I went and did it, and it was awesome. And I went and did it the following week, and it sucked. And one of
Isn't
the
that the
comedians,
business?
I know.
I know.
And then one of the comedians who was there, who saw me the week prior, said, you know what, you need to try this again. You need to do it again. So I ended up being a stand-up comic for 15 years.
That's guts, because I think if I sucked, I'd be like, that's it, I'm leaving, I'm never doing it again. You really have to have the guts and people to support you to get back up there.
I
right?
know. Yeah, it was. If
And
he
the
wouldn't
goods.
have told me to go up again, and he brought me to this club in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where University of Michigan is. He said, we're going to the club in Ann Arbor. I'm going to bring you with me. You're going to go up there, and you're going to try this all over again. So I did, and it worked. And 15 years I did it until I got into radio. I came out here as a comic to LA, and ended up getting into. I was working in talk radio a little bit in Michigan, and then I ended up getting a show here on KLSX.
But you were also on the radio back in Detroit,
Yes,
too.
I was on the radio back in
And that
Detroit.
was a very
with-
successful show.
Yes,
with
with Mitch Albom. Yeah.
he's terrific.
Yeah, so-
you were terrific. You were really a great team.
I like working with Mitch. I still do. I still sit in with him often. Whenever they need, a little topic about girls or relationships or something in the news, a lot of entertainment things they'll bring me in for, things that maybe they're not as,
And I love, today we're here to talk about your book, 14 Days, a Memoir. And I reread it last night. And I love how Mitch also wrote about your mom in the book. And it was very touching what he had to say about her. But it was even more touching that she said, I want Mitch to write something about me.
I know. She
And
was
I
like,
don't know what her voice was like, but I almost...
That was my mom's voice.
Really? I'm
she's
envisioning
I want
her.
Mitch to write my eulogy.
You know, that came through in your writings. And
funny.
I really felt your mom. And I felt her again last night as I was reading about her. So
She would like that.
yeah, so
Yeah, that's how she talks. She was very,
really...
I
and
want Mitch to write my eulogy.
I loved that. I mean, and so I have a copy of your book here, and it says, this is a special little book about a mother and a daughter and saying goodbye. And it was about the last 14 days of her life when you were called back to Detroit, and she decided to tell everyone, I'm done. She had a fall. She was in the hospital, and she said, I'm done with dialysis. I want to go, and I want to go with dignity. It's not exactly how she said it. I could almost imagine her voice.
Yeah.
And you decided to write about this, write about that experience. And for me, what was touching, almost on the first page when I read it, and you were talking about a toaster, and you were talking about the bread and the last 2 slices that were left of the, in the bag of the bread. And I thought, this woman is a skilled and amazing writer, because you grabbed me right then with the toast.
Oh, thank you.
Just so you know, the toast.
The book opens with, I thought burning my toast was going to be the worst thing that happened today. Because, and that sets the tone for, I think, life. I tried to make that sentence important because it's sort of like we go through our days and a little tiny thing will happen and we get all pissed off. And it's like, because that's how the book starts. I got mad at my brother because my brother...
He was on the phone.
Called us to say, you got to get to the hospital now. And my parents had this toaster that didn't pop up on its own. You had to pop it up like for the toast to get the toast out. So talking to my brother, and he got me caught up on the phone, and there literally were 2 pieces of bread left in that package to eat. And he got me on the phone. The toast started burning. I had no toast. I was mad.
And that's everybody's day, but
yeah.
the fact that you chose to write about such a tiny little incident
Right.
that we all have every day, right, Kurt? Don't you have these toaster issues?
Of course, yes.
Or thereabouts. It just led me to realize that these are the little nuances in life that really make for terrific writing. And again, this hour is about writing your book, writing your memoirs, writing a memoir of an event that happened that really touched you.
Yeah.
Also, on the next page, the second page, I really scoured this again last night. I was eating it up.
Thank you.
When you were describing your mom and dad, how they never even thought to get another toaster. And that to me, that was the way those people were then. And, they were of a certain era, born pretty much in the 20s, as my parents were. And that's who they were. They would not go to Target and get another, $15 toaster.
We'd have to buy them one for Christmas.
Exactly. And even then they'd say, I didn't need a toaster.
Right. They would they've done that to us several times. We've bought them new TVs because, they had this one TV that the pictures would shrink, like it would turn black. Like the whole TV was black and there was this much picture, like a 2-inch band of picture on the TV. And they would watch it that way. And I came to visit them, I'm like, what? How can you watch? They watch TV all day too, by the way. I'm like, how can you even watch the TV? We can see it.
And it's probably something
totally fine for us.
They either overlook it or they just continue to watch.
They just thought it was fine. They didn't have any complaints. So that year we bought them a new TV for Christmas, a nice flat screen. It was beautiful. Why did you buy us a TV? We don't need a new TV. You need a new TV. So yeah, a toaster would have been probably that Christmas that this all happened. I would have bought her a toaster for Christmas.
And that was such an unpredictable time. When you went there, you weren't expecting to hear,
No.
I'm going to say goodbye now.
No, I was just going back for a long weekend visit, and I like to go back before Christmas. I don't like to travel at Christmas time because it's horrible travel, and I don't like the, delays, and so I always like to go back beforehand. And I just figured that's what we were doing. I was going home to have a nice little long weekend at home. We might have a nice Christmas dinner. We'd all celebrate, and then I'd go back to California.
Were you writing all of this down when you... those last 14 days, I know you were trying to you were trying to get your mom on video as well. But were you also writing quite a bit down, or is a lot of this from your memory?
Well, I wrote a lot of sections. Actually, what I was doing, I was Facebooking information out there because a lot of, my mom's friends and family are on, people that go to our church and stuff were on Facebook. And I figured that every day, if I could just put 1 or 2 things up there to keep people posted as to my mom's, what was happening, that way it would eliminate people having to call and us having to call people. And so I figured it was a good way to get the word out. Because you tell one person, that person can call somebody and tell somebody.
Exactly.
So it just became really a form of communication to everybody who was out, in the in the world as to what was happening. But the more I started writing, maybe the more poignant the passages got. So when it was all over, somebody said, "You really should turn those into a book." And I mean, they were only little tiny blurbs. It was nowhere near a book. So using those passages along with my dad's diary, which I do cite in the book a couple of times, I pull some excerpts from his diary. My dad writes an extremely detailed diary every day.
Does he? Did he always do that when you were growing up?
He started when he retired, and he's got hundreds of them. And every day, it's not like how I'm feeling or, I'm a little, it's not like my kind of diary that I would write. It's more like, I woke up today, the temperature was 53 degrees, it was raining. Good Morning America was on. Lisa Marie Presley was on Good Morning America. Then we watched Kathy Lee.
But it's in those small nuances that you really get a glimpse of how a person lives every day and their thoughts. It's never really in the extraordinary. It's always in the ordinary. At least that's what I think.
It is true. But in his diary helped me fill in holes in my book. So what I did was I took my excerpts plus his diary, because his diary gave me the everyday, what was going on those days. I wouldn't have remembered in 100 years. There's no way I could have remembered.
You mean from those 14 days?
Yeah.
How much after this happened, this was 2011, did you then write this down?
I started writing the book about a year afterwards. What I did was I just went back into Facebook. I took all of those excerpts that I wrote. The book has a great, I thought it was a good way to do the book in just a 14-day segment for a memoir.
Was this your idea to do it that way?
Not often do people do them so, microscopically. Yeah, it was my idea. I just thought I want to just take those 14 days and just write about those days. We do a lot of backtracking. There's flashbacks to, other life situations and things between my mom and I and, my mom's mother. I go back in history throughout those 14 days.
Give me a couple. Give us a couple.
Well, I talk about, in the book, I talk about my grandmother who lived with us. And
well, she was, 102 years?
She was old. She was in her late 80s. She was old.
Oh, she was?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody lived into their hundreds in your family.
Oh, yeah, my godmother. Yeah, my godmother.
Oh, your godmother.
She's almost 100. Yeah.
Okay.
She was the one who walks them all and does her 5 miles a day. Yeah, she walks. She goes dancing. She's crazy. She travels all the time. Totally different than my mom. But yeah, I talk about her in the book too. But because she came to visit during that time, and that actually is a flashback story that I talk about, because I talk about a story between my mom and my godmother, how they had this very scary drive once when my mom was pregnant with me. My godmother had 5 daughters. All of the 3 of the daughters were in the car. My Aunt Margaret, who was a nun. And it sounds like a joke starting, right? A nun,
right off the bat.
a nun, 2
but
ladies,
even
and 3 kids were in a car.
Even that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we need to say. Is a nun. Do people still have these funny stories like today, growing up, like the nun? And do they? I mean, I seem to wonder if it's just a moment in time again, because they were generally, the product of immigrant parents, and they had to find their way here, and just sort of the nutty ways that they lived. And your parents sounded a lot like mine. Mine were hysterical, and they would argue every day. As I think you said,
yeah, my parents fought out all the time.
What did they fight about?
Because whatever. I mean, they could fight about the oatmeal's not hot, or where's my coffee, or I don't want to watch Good Morning America today. Why is this movie on? But they would fight about everything. But I think that's just the way they talked.
That's what I used to say to my parents. I would say, but you're screaming, and they'd say, "No, we're not, Deborah. This is just how we converse." I said, well, but wait a minute, like, why are you fighting about how large or small to cut the apples in the pie? I don't understand. But
that's how they talk. My husband talks like that too, and he's Greek. And it must be a European thing, but his parents, I think, probably had that same form of communication in their house. But my husband will say things like that, like, where did you put the pencils? Like, instead of just like, where are the pencils?
Excuse me, where are the pencils? But I'm not that way either, and I'm full-blooded Italian, and I even tell my kids, I think I'm watered down from my parents, but I will say to them, this is how I speak, and I think, oh my gosh, I've become my mother.
Yeah, I do the same thing, and I notice my husband doing that, and he'll go, and he'll say just what you said. He said, well, how am I supposed to say it? Where are the pencils? And I'm like, no, I'm just saying, just say it normally. Where's the pencils? Can't you just say it without saying, where are the pencils? But that's how that's how
Do you
everybody
do
in
that
my
too,
family
or
talk.
no? Is this just
Well, if he starts talking there, then I start talking there.
right?
then
You've
we're
got to
both talking
elevate,
up here.
and then you're
Yeah.
both up here, and then everyone's like this, and then the dogs, the cats, and anyone in the room is just suddenly there's this frenetic energy, right?
But nobody's really yelling. It's just the way everybody talks, and that's how everybody talked in my family.
Yeah.
And I think that's how that's how my parents communicated. We weren't a very quiet or subdued family.
This came through in the book. I loved this. But give me another example of something that really touched you, that when you thought about it and you wrote about it, was it almost cathartic for you when you started writing about this?
It was. There were so many moments during those 14 days. I mean, like I said, I talked about my grandmother dying in our house because my grandmother lived with us the last maybe 10 years of her life, 15 years.
And how mom was scrubbing the carpet almost obsessively every day.
Yeah, she died in the
spot.
hallway. We don't know if she was going to or from her bedroom. We don't know what happened, but
She was
my
found
mom
there.
woke up in the morning and she was found in their hallway. So my mom every time she'd go into the hallway, she would see my grandmother in the hallway. So she kept trying to scrub the carpet, scrub the vision off
Can
of
I
the
laugh
carpet.
a little bit?
Yeah, well, it is.
Because it's
What
very
she
humorous,
did
I have
was,
to say.
what she ended up doing was, and I put this in the thing, she sprayed it with bleach. She sprayed the carpet
This is
with
my
bleach
mother.
in that spot so that she would get rid of that sight that she kept seeing. But the carpet was blue; it was cobalt blue.
oh my
and
God.
she, and so she sprayed bleach on the carpet. So until the day my mom died, there were these like
Stains.
stained yellowy purple stains all over the carpet. So what wasn't there became there because now that there was bleach there, all you did was notice that part of the carpet where my grandma died. So it was.
But once again, not getting another, piece of carpeting for the room.
Right.
It's just wash it with bleach. It doesn't matter if it does. It comes out the way it was. This is the way we do things.
Right.
And it does leave an imprint in your mind about how we grew up.
Right.
And it's humorous. I have a picture of my mom bent down. Actually, John took it. My husband. My mom was obsessively cleaning. In fact, before they went on vacation, you'll love this. She would vacuum the carpeting and, start backing away from the room because she didn't want to leave footprints on the carpeting before they went on vacation. So she would do
That's
that kind of a
funny.
thing. I know, right? That's just the way they were. So we have a picture of her on her hands and knees, butt up, scrubbing my kitchen floor. And I said, but I pay somebody to do that. She goes, not good enough. So my mom would come from Florida and start scrubbing my floor. So I get it. In these stories, you just live with them thinking, is this normal? And then they lovingly are put back together.
Right.
And they come out in a book like this, 14 Days of Memoir. I love this book.
Oh,
I think
thank
it's
you.
really, really special.
Thank you.
But we have Lisa De Benedictis, I think, also on the phone. I'll get to her in a second. Hi, Lisa. Two Lisas.
Hello.
Hi. Hang on one sec. But what got you to do this? Because sometimes to prompt a person to write a book, they'll go to a course, they'll do something. But you just did this on your own?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm a writer. I was a journalism major in college, and then doing comedy. Comedy's all writing.
It really is.
So, I'm a writer I've always been a writer. So it really wasn't difficult for me to start writing it. Like I wrote, and I did work with a friend of mine who's a writing coach for books. She does a lot of books, and that's her job, is she works with writers.
Did she prompt you, or how did that go?
She she went through my book proposal with me and helped me sort out some things and how I wanted to arrange stuff in the book. She was really good about doing that. And, with a little help from her, I just sort of fixed it into the book that it is now. And then I sent the proposal out to, a friend of mine sent it out to an agent friend of hers who's a pretty big agent. They represent some good people. And she liked it right off the bat and took me in. So, and then we got the publisher right off the bat.
And who's your publisher?
It's called Savio Republic, and it's distributed by Simon and Schuster.
Oh, so you well, I didn't think so, but you did not self-publish. That's so common now to do your own.
I was going to self-publish because at first I just thought, this is such a personal little project. I'm just going to self-publish.
Right?
it.
Who would really want to represent it? But they did.
Oh yeah, it was pretty quick, and I'm very thank you Jesus for for the speed of the. I know that doesn't always happen. I have a book that I put out before this. It's a whole completely long story, but in 2001 I wrote a book called The Breakup Diary. It's just a guided journal for like young girls going through breakups. And it was
through a lot of your own experience or people that you
it was
know?
totally through my own
I know,
experience.
miserable, isn't it?
Yeah, it was miserable. And I thought maybe I can try to help young girls. But it was a time when guided journals nobody was using guided journals. It was
Really?
I sort of made up my own exercises. What I did was when I was going through a breakup, I made up my own workbook and my own exercises to do myself so that I could try to
that's
get over the
brilliant.
breakup.
How many did you have?
A lot.
Wow.
And I made myself these things every day so that I could try to get through stuff myself. And I just ended up turning that into a book. But at the time, it wasn't a very, nobody did that. And people, I had an agent, and publishers would say, well, why do I need somebody, if you're going to write a journal, you just write in your journal. And I'm like, no, it's a guided journal, but there's no such thing as a guided journal. And then all
That's
of a sudden, now
ridiculous.
there's billions of guided journals out there, and whatever. But it actually sold pretty well for being self-published, and it's still out there, and it still sells. I get checks.
Tell me the name of that again.
It's called The Breakup Diary.
The Breakup Diary. Okay, It sounds to me that it's not even just for young girls. It sounds like advice that almost
You could
anybody
use
could
it.
use.
Oh yeah, you can use it anytime. Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So give me a couple of little prompts. Give me a couple.
Well, I think that there were I had sections in there if you're going to write, and these days it would be send your ex an email. To just write it down in the book, I have a section where you just when you break up with somebody, you have those moments where you think, oh, I have to call him and tell him this right now.
Yeah.
Because you try to make excuses to try to get a hold of that person. You're like, oh, you know what? I
Right.
need to tell him this now. No, you don't. He doesn't care about you. You don't need to tell him.
That's the big one.
So-
He doesn't care
yeah,
about you.
Yeah. So there was a section in the book where he doesn't want to talk to you. Write it down here. If you think you need to talk to him about it, write it down. Sit with it for a few minutes. Sit with it for an hour, then 2 hours, then 3 hours. Eventually, you're not going to want to tell him anymore.
So
But-
that also seemed very cathartic for you.
Oh
to
yeah,
write this.
yeah, it was. That was another personal project. So I just thought, I could go the same route with this book, but then I ended up getting the agent, then getting the publisher, and it all it's all good.
Well, that's wonderful, and this book is really wonderful. And I know you have to run back to the Grammy office. So before I let you go, just a couple little things. Are you excited for the Grammys? Thank you for bringing my Grammy tickets again.
You're welcome.
In case you missed it at the top, here's my Grammy tickets. Thank you very much. Are you excited? This
gonna
is
be
going to
fun.
be a great
Monday,
show.
Monday, February 15th. The show itself is going to be
Adele is
awesome.
back. I'm so excited.
Adele's coming
Who else?
back.
Is
We
Bieber
have,
playing, or-
I think, I know Pitbull's doing something with not Alan Thicke. I keep saying Alan Thicke. Robin Thicke.
I do the same thing. I
Every time
forget
I
it.
do that,
It
I
doesn't
know.
really matter. We all know who we're
Adele
talking about.
singing. Today there was just something. I think that Don Henley and
for
and
the Eagles.
are going to be doing a tribute for Glenn Fry and
So sad.
yeah. And there's a lot of Alice Cooper, my favorite since I was 10 years old, is playing with his band, the Hollywood Vampires. They're doing
that's
a
cool.
tribute to Lemmy from Motorhead. And the show is just chock full of superstars, and it's going to be great music, and it's going to be so much fun.
I cannot wait. But you're so interesting. Your husband's a musician, right?
Yeah, he's a musician.
What's the name of his band?
Well, he played in Guns N' Roses, and he played with Alice Cooper. He was Carole King's keyboard player. He plays now with Billy Bob Thornton in a band called the Boxmasters.
Billy Bob was there the day that I went to your book signing.
Yes,
I was so
yes.
excited. And I'm not one of those people who get starstruck because, we're kind of used to it. But I was like, oh my God, you won't believe who's here. So I was really excited. That
You
was
probably
very
don't-
cool.
When you don't expect somebody like that.
No, exactly. It's
You
like,
know.
is that like who I think? Can I have a picture? So that was really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, you deserve all the success in the world. You're also a very lovely person.
Aw,
so
thank you.
Even
You're
driving
lovely
down here and
too.
almost getting a ticket. Sorry. I really
You
do
almost got a
appreciate it.
ticket?
No, you.
Oh yeah, well no, it's the parking.
She's
I
at
worry
the
about
meter, this girl.
I worry
so-
about the parking here. I one time I make this very short story. I know Lisa's holding. I parked at we're at the where it's. Can I
Hello?
say where we are?
Yeah, of course, we're at the Sunset Gower Studio.
And we're at the
Hell yeah.
Sunset Gower Studios. And I was meeting a friend for lunch at what was, and I don't think it's there anymore, the Gower Gulch Grill at a little. It's a little strip mall across the street.
Is it still there?
I parked.
I think it's not the same thing. There's something else.
Yeah, there's something else there, but it used to be called the Gower Gulch Grill. So I parked my car there, and I came over here to get her to this office. I came back, and my car was up on a tow thing in the
God.
parking lot. And
no wonder why
the
you're so afraid.
attendant said, I said, what do you do with my car? And he said,
Did they take it? Tell me they didn't take it.
Yes, they did. And they said,
Idiots.
you left the parking lot. I said, I went to go get my girlfriend. We're having lunch here at the Gower Gulch Grill. I went in and got the manager of the restaurant, and I said, I'm coming to your restaurant, and they're towing my car. And the restaurant said, there's nothing we can do about that.
They're always patrolling that area.
Yeah,
like they're very strict. It's so weird.
You don't know if that
It's
was
so bad for business.
I know.
It's terrible
if that
for
were
business.
me,
It was terrible, and they
I'd be
wouldn't-
hanging onto the truck.
Yeah, the restaurant
flipping out.
wouldn't. The restaurant wouldn't stick up for me. We ended up not eating at the restaurant. I was so mad.
I wouldn't.
And
I wonder why they're out of business.
They ended up putting me in a. I had to go into the tow truck because I had to pay the guy $80 cash to take my car down off the hoist, and he had to drive me to an ATM in his truck with my car dangling
pain
off
in
the
the
back.
ass.
I went to the ATM, got him his $80. He drove me back to the parking lot, took my car down, ruined my back tire. It had a giant bubble on it. They wouldn't take responsibility for it. So whenever I come back over to this area, I get like hives because all I can remember is that stupid story.
Oh, I'm
about
so sorry. And
the
thank you for
dumb
trekking
tow
all the
truck
way
driver.
over here. Oh my gosh, Lisa, you're a love for doing that. Thank
Well,
you.
it was fun.
I'm going to
it was
let you
super
go
fun
for
to
a
be
quick
here.
second.
Thank you.
I'm going
Okay.
to let you go. I will see you at the Grammys. I'll talk to you before then,
Yay!
though. I will give you a call before then. And again, everybody, 14 days in memoir, a mother, a daughter, a 2-week goodbye. It is a beautiful book, and thank you for being here.
Thank
and
you. It's available
sharing-
everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. All bookstores, in stores, out stores, online, everywhere.
Yeah, and sharing your stories of how you decide and why you decided to write it. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you
We're gonna
for
go
having me.
Yeah, we're going to go for a really quick break, okay, Kurt? Play any of my favorite songs, and then we'll talk to Lisa and Beth.
I was wondering if after all these years you'd like to me to go over everything. They say the time's supposed to heal ya, but I ain't done much healing. Hello, can you hear me? I'm in California dreaming about who we used to be when we were younger and free. I've forgotten how it felt before the world fell at our feet. There's such a difference between us and a million miles. Hello from the other side. I must have called 1,000
Lisa, I can't hear Lisa. Okay, I'm going to need you to intro yourself. You won't even believe this, but I will intro you and talk about some of the stuff you've done. I've actually left all of my materials at home, so which is a bummer.
Can I email you something? Or?
Don't worry about it. I'm going to wing it. I'm pretty good at winging anything. And Beth, if you can hear me, I did the same with your stuff.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but don't worry about it. I left all that stuff that I was reading at home. I left it at home. But I'm really good at remembering shit. So, okay, let's go.
Okay.
I'm ready.
but it don't matter. It clearly doesn't tear you apart anymore.
Okay, everybody, we back? There's my applause. Okay, everybody, welcome. Lisa just had to go. She's working. She's so busy this week. The fact that she even came in, Kurt, to talk to us.
Yeah.
I mean, everything and anything is going on over there at the Grammy office. I really
course.
appreciate it. Hopefully, she didn't get towed because she was parked on the street. And I just
They are really strict over there.
they're a pain in the ass, is what they
I
are.
hate it. Really.
They are. They're a pain in the ass. So anyway, here we are on to our next author, Lisa DeBenedictis. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Are you there?
Yes.
Where's her
I'm so
applause?
glad to be a part of your show. Thank you so much.
Ah, there we go. We also have Beth Bornstein Dunnington. She's a writer and editor, a performer. She's a stage director, and she lives on the big island of Hawaii. She lived in New York, and she leads a really, really popular, wonderful writers' workshop called the Big Island Writers' Workshop. Love the name of that. And I attended that, so we're going to get to that in a little bit. But first, I actually wanted to go to our next author, Lisa DeBenedictis. And by the way, Lisa, I think we first connected on Facebook, which is kind of a funny story because my mother's maiden name is DeBenedictis. And somewhere along the line, I felt like we were related. So...
But I actually knew you in L.A. You might not remember me, but I remember you.
Uh-oh. What did I do?
You didn't do anything bad. I mean, you were very pleasant and really nice. I've met you a few times around school stuff. I think we have boys the same age, and then also I met you at Maria Shriver's a couple of times.
Oh, absolutely. And you actually in your book talked about meeting Arnold over near the bakery that I pretty much go to almost every morning. So I thought that was a really
Bellwood
funny
Bakery.
The Bellwood
I love
Bakery
that
off of
place.
Barrington. I thought that was such a really, really funny story. And yeah, over at Maria Shriver's, she's lovely. I love what she's doing. Architects of Change, you know about all that, right?
I don't know currently what she's up to, but she's always up to really good stuff, whether
She really
it's on
is.
broadcast or even her children's books or her political activism. She's always doing really important work, and she's such a nice person.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's talk a little bit about your book. And the purpose of this hour is we're talking about writing one's memoirs, writing a book, getting it down. What motivated you to do this in the first place? And just to talk a little bit about the book. So the title of it is?
The name of the book is called Short Skirts and Shorter Stories, Musings on Life, Love, and Lust. And
I
I've
love
been
the
a
lust
writer
part.
most of my life. I was a writer and producer for television, and I helped create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which used all sorts of writing skills. I don't really consider myself a writer, but I write every day. And it was funny listening to your last guest because my father's Italian and comes from a big Italian family, and my mother is an only child and a WASP. But it's after
That's interesting.
many years of marriage, they switched personalities, and it's always like moonstruck in our house. Everybody's always kind of yelling, but in a very loving way. It's kind of a loud cacophony that's a bit of a symphony. And I have multiple sclerosis. I fell. I've had many really bad falls, and I went through a really tumultuous divorce. And I started kind of writing. It ended up being a memoir, but I wrote it in the form of short stories, and it's the exact opposite trajectory as your former guest, who was just delightful.
Yeah, she's lovely.
I didn't have an agent help me on this. I have an agent who I adore, Glenn Bickel, and he's been my television agent, and we've known each other for a very long time, and he was aware that I was writing this and very encouraging. But I didn't have a literary agent. I made a couple of calls from to house or someplace like that, and I ended up. They said, "Oh, nobody buys short stories." And I just thought that's ridiculous. What a silly thing to say. Somebody probably told Chaucer that at some point. So I decided to self-publish. I had the stupidity and the audacity to do so. And it's a really arduous, difficult process, I think, and I'm still discovering a lot about it. So it's more diplomatic now because if somebody, the powers that be say, oh, that can't be done, you can just do it your own way. But it's a very complicated process. I will say that. But
well, I loved
people are buying the book and they really like it.
Well, it's a wonderful read, and it was a quick read. Actually, I noticed the print was nice and large. Thank you very much for people like me who can't see very well, especially without my glasses.
The first printing wasn't, and I wasn't so pleased with how the first printing came out. So I changed that in the second edition. And it is a fast read. Some stories are longer, and some of them are just poems and musings. But the trajectory kind of builds, I think, a nice
Well,
story.
it did, and I really enjoyed how you started your book talking about your mom and then talking about your dad, a little bit about them. So they were introduced right off the bat so that I understood a little bit about you and what made Lisa de Benedictis. And then into your, I think you had 3 boyfriends who died, nothing to do with you, but what an impression that would leave on you. And then just you would interject short stories as a very quick chapter, and I loved that. Just moments in time from your own life.
Thank you.
And then
as a film writer, I think I wrote them almost like little scenes in my head. That's how they came to me when I was writing them, and I knew that the sequence was really important, but it was hard for me to sequence them. So I had a student that I've been mentoring at Miami University. I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements at universities and Playhouse Square and places like that. And I spoke at Miami University, and I met him, and then I met him again this summer, and he brought his parents to come and see me speak at a library event, and he asked if he could, kind of help me proof, and I said yes, and I gave him some editorial license to go ahead and help me sequence these, and I told him, look, there's a certain, I think we should start with home, and then I go to New York, and then I go to Los Angeles, and then I come back home again. But
home is Ohio.
Home is Ohio, northeastern Ohio, near the Cleveland area, and I need some help, kind of putting these in order, and I want you to think of this as film clips, and so he did, and he helped me figure out the sequence, and he did a very good job. After he put, his version together, I didn't have one change, and so we worked together. He was an amazing writer's assistant, and he's going to be, I believe, a big writer. He's just submitted some stuff to Saturday Night Live. So
I love how it's gone full circle. How you started out again at home and you ended it at home, but again in between, I love the little quips and just the little bits of what you've observed throughout your own life and just how you wrote about that, and it sort of broke it up in a nice way, I thought. And again, not having an editor, that must have been initially that you just sort of wrote off the top. I find that interesting because I've always had a story in my head. Actually, I have many, many stories in my head. Sometimes I feel like I have two heads. But so I decided one day to go to a writer's workshop. I've never been to a writer's workshop in my life. And I thought, whatever. I'm a journalist. I'm a TV journalist. I'm used to writing, very, very quickly, sound bites, boom, in and out of there. I thought, oh, what the heck? So I then signed up for the the writer's workshop put on by Beth. Beth, are you over there?
I am. I'm loving hearing your version of the story. Yes.
I hope it's true. So I attended I told you I'm a little nutty. So I attended your workshop and I was instantly drawn in because she gave prompts. And, right. So I'll give you my version and then you can give the real version. And she would give little prompts on what you might want to write about. And I thought, what the hell is this? And you have to use your pen onto the paper. And I thought, now who does this anymore? But of course I was a good girl and I did as I was told, and then it just came spilling out. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to write something. And this inspired me to continue writing. And I called Beth up about doing something together, which we are. And then I thought of you, Lisa, and my other Lisa. And I thought, what a great idea to put a show together about how to get down your memoirs, how to write and how to get it together. Go to a workshop or what? So Beth, what do you suggest for people who are interested? They have a story or two or three in their head and they don't know what the hell to do to get it out there.
Right. Well, I think a workshop's a great way to start. I'm not the only one doing these workshops, but in my workshop, you come in and again, as we did, I give you the prompts and it's structured and that's part of it. You have 45 minutes or an hour to work on a piece, and you have a choice of prompts, and you see a kind of stream of consciousness. You see where it's going. It weaves at its own pace, and then, and then the prompt is over. You get a warning, and it's over, and then we read. And I think the responsibility of reading out loud to the group really helps that. It lets you know what resonates. And as you know, in my workshops, we do this speak back, where we say words we've heard from other writers, and that also lets writers know.
I think reading your own work out loud also can be helpful. I mean, most of my life I was a film and television writer. I was also a speech writer for presidential candidates. And when you read something out loud, you hear it differently than sometimes when you write it. And Deborah, we talked about, you're probably going to write your own book, or maybe it's a screenplay. I don't know what it is, but writing is rewriting always. It's like sculpting. So no one starts out with something perfect. They chisel and polish, and you can. It doesn't have to be a lonely process. You can give it to someone or several people, but when you give it to someone whose opinion you really want, know that it's your project. So what I always tell people, and I used to do this when I would write screenplays, like I would always have my father read it. My father was not in the business. He was a bricklayer and stonemason, but he understands story and character, and his notes would often be much better than any network president. You might get 5 different opinions, and you can't take everybody's opinion because they'll pull a yarn and mess up your project. But when you get something and you're ready for feedback, if 5 people hit kind of the same place, you know that's an area that needs to be reworked. You don't necessarily need to take all their notes.
Interesting.
So Lisa, in my workshops, it's a little different, and I agree with you completely. In my workshops, we actually don't have feedback. I used to do that years ago. I used to let people talk, and people would, have discussion, and this works and that doesn't. The point of my workshop is to find your story. It's to connect to it. So we write and we read, and nobody speaks. I don't speak either.
But you don't. So they don't give opinions on what you've written.
No, and I know. And actually, when opinions are given, it actually can hurt the process because, as you said,
because people take the notes too literally.
Honestly,
but I think what you're telling Deborah, and what I tell people when I teach them how to write, whether it's a screenplay or a novel or whatever, a play, is you need a structure. I use geometry to structure my whatever it is. But one of the things I also tell people is sometimes you write something that starts out as a play or a book, and then you put it in a drawer and you end up doing something else in life. But don't ever throw that away because it might morph into something later on in life. You know.
And
you live in Hawaii, so you might know my friend that wrote the Girlfriend's Guides books.
Wait, is that Vicky? Is that Vicky?
Also. Yeah, Vicky Iving, right.
I know Vicky.
Right. I don't think she's on my island. I think she's on Oahu.
But I know her from out here.
She wrote these little, Girlfriend's Guides book, which were just lovely little tiny gems, what your girlfriends will tell you about your pregnancy, about your first year, about the toddler years, whatever. And now, one of the books has become a series, and it's not a surprise to me because the little intimate nature of her anecdotes were always very filmic, So
what's interesting?
Great,
Go
I
ahead,
have to interject because I have to tell a little Deborah story. What was great was her coming into the room, kind of running around, and her phone was ringing, and she had to take the call, and she was running around, and I said, Deborah, come sit down. And
if that's not me, Deborah, come sit down. I mean, all the time. My whole family. Deborah, come sit down. I have 3 boys.
You were the student that was always in the principal's office, Deborah.
Damn right, in the nun's office.
When Deborah landed in the room, I have to say, she wrote beautifully.
Thank you.
Boy, she's got some books. So yes, she really did, and she was present.
Well,
and then
but
she said,
I
"Okay, I want to continue with it."
Storytelling is one of those things. People talk about. We live in an illiterate society, and I beg to differ in a certain way. I mean, people still read, they watch television, they watch nightly news, they watch plays, they're going to the symphony and operas, and those are all forms of storytelling. And if you're a good storyteller as a journalist and you understand the arc of a story in a soundbite or in a radio show or in a television news story, then you still know how to craft something. And you can take that discipline and put it into another form if you want. But also, I don't think you need to do it all alone. You can always get a partner or a friend to help you. You know what I mean?
I because my voice is a very special voice. However, it was definitely through Beth that I found it. Now, for me, it was through Beth. In fact, she has since sent me a few other prompts, and I've actually been a little preoccupied. I haven't been able to write. But I will tell you, having her in the room was a nice little added bonus for me because it inspired me. And I'm looking around the room sometimes saying, how am I going to do this in the room by myself? I almost feel like I should call her and just have her on the other end and just sitting there.
Yeah.
Because
I think if we do exactly as you said, you do the structure of the prompt, you take the prompt you want to work in, time it, and have that structure. For you, it's just going into a place where the phone's not ringing and where you can work.
But also, some people
wait
do
one
better
second. Also, the deadline.
I mean, there are people writing in Starbucks every day. There are people that now take their Apple computers and write on the beach. You don't have to be alone in a room with a desk.
And Lisa, do you know what we do in
things.
my workshop that's interesting? And I don't know if you work this way, but in my workshop we write by hand.
I love that.
And
I don't write by hand anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. I can type much faster than I can think sometimes.
Yeah, no, you can type faster. This is the rule in the workshop. You write by hand. It's just an interesting what you get. I find for the workshop at least that the writing goes a little bit deeper.
There was
And,
something very
you know, this-
inspiring about it, I will say.
You have to work harder. You have to work harder when you're writing by hand. And people come in and they say, "Oh, I only want to work on a computer," and
Right.
they bitch about it. But you know, and again, this is the structure of just my workshop. Not everybody's doing that by any means.
And that's
this is just what
and that's
happens
what
in- this is what
creativity
happens
is
in this room.
really about too. I mean, I think there's not one way to do anything. You know, I mean, there's not one
Right.
architect that
Not at
you know.
all. I'm just talking about what works
can-
in my workshop and what
Right, they can tell you
construction
how they create a building. But you know, like I worked a long time in television, and television is, you know, a very communal place to write. You know, you'll have like 10 people sitting around a table, and there are benefits to that, but there are also, you know, it's not your singular vision like writing.
Right.
Well,
It's
it was nice-
interesting.
what
I
was
worked with
nice
TV as
about-
well, and my TV writing experience was opposite yours because I was writing scripts for shows and I was writing by myself on a computer and sending it in.
What,
so
did
I
you
had
write
this
1
whole
hours
TV
or did you
career.
write comedies or?
I did animated TV. I did like Tiny Toons for Spielberg and Jan and the Holograms and all those animated series in the 80s.
But you didn't
and
go
90s,
in on a
Batman and all
staff
that.
or anything like that.
No, I didn't. I wrote freelance, but I was working on all these shows at once, and I was working all day alone at my computer and sending this to Nickelodeon and sending this to, and you know, it was interesting, but it was a whole different way to work. For that kind of writing, script writing, yes, absolutely. on
I
computer.
found
in this
that
room
what-
where we're finding our stories, we do really well. by
I found
hand.
that what helped
Deborah
me
did.
by hand, it really helped me. And initially, it wasn't my favorite. I didn't say anything, but I thought, all right, I'll give it a try. That's what I'm here for. But also,
That's a little bit.
exactly. But also, I like, Beth, that there was a deadline to it. And as a journalist, you can imagine I'm really used to deadline. I work well under deadline. This show is on a deadline. I mean, I just do. If I know I have 2 minutes left, 5 minutes left, it really helped me. So for me, at least, the workshop, the prompts, working individually with you and having prompts, Kurt's putting up his hand, I have 5 minutes left. That helped me a lot. Your workshops have
Thank you.
been
I really, yes,
invaluable to me.
I'm really happy that it spoke to you like that.
Yeah, and Lisa, I'm so enamored with you that you can actually sit down and write this on your own, because I'm not sure I would have been able to do that.
I had lots of help. You know, I've been. I started out wanting to be a journalist. I was going to be a foreign war correspondent, and so lots of my friends in that area, and they're still storytellers. Scott Simon is a very good friend. He's mentioned in the book several times.
Right.
He's a wonderful writer who's up on sabbatical right now writing a book. And the last book he just came out with is an amazing book that's not unlike Laurie's. It's about his mother, and it's memories about his mother. And the way that the impetus for that was that he was tweeting what ended up being the last moments of her life from her deathbed. And he had such a worldwide response all over the world to these tweets that he ended up writing a book about it. And so I have people in my life that I can kind of go to, and, you know, Sherry Coben is one of those people. We've worked together on and off through for years. She created a show called Kate and Allie, and she helped me, you know,
Great show.
proof in the middle of the night. I decided I had a deadline in my head, and it didn't work because my father fell and suffered a subdermal hematoma and almost died, and had to have a terrible brain surgery. So I got put off track, because that's what happens in life. There's no track. I always love it when people say, stay on track. There's no track in life. You just get through the day as best you can. We all do. But in my head, I just had to get these finished at a certain time, and
So
you
you
have
had
to
your
give
own,
yourself
you had
deadlines.
your own inner
And-
deadline,
and
right?
As someone who has worked in the news business, you know, you self-impose a deadline and then you adhere to it. But creativity today, I think, is alive and very vibrant, and I think everybody has a story to tell if it's something you want to share, and there's so many forums for sharing it now.
Beth, go ahead. I'm sorry, but let me just interrupt for a second. Beth, if you don't mind, tell me some of the people that you've worked with that you've helped to get their stories out. You know, like right now,
Well,
I think you're helping to edit 1 or 2 stories. If you're allowed to talk about that a little, I'm not sure.
Oh, sure. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that I'm working with an author in Hawaii named Julie Zemelis. We worked on a book together called How to Move to Kona, an insider's guide, which basically tells you how to move to Hawaii, but it's more than that. It's a spiritual book. And the new book we're doing together is The Call to Kona, The Call to the Big Island. And it's basically people who move to Hawaii feel called here. It's really an interesting thing. And she's got the publisher lined up. And it's nice. So it's been interesting working in Hawaii. But I want to say one more thing about writing in the workshop, and it speaks to what Lisa is saying about how we create. The stories in the workshop, written in the workshop, find their way out in the world. My story that I wrote recently in a workshop.
And what was that about?
My friend,
yeah.
That's called Shades of Blue, and it's by it's edited by Amy Ferris, who's a wonderful writer. And it a whole bunch of us got together, Carolyn Leavitt and a bunch of writers, and we wrote this anthology about suicide, depression, and sadness. And pieces from the workshop made Pam Houston, some really beautiful writers, made their way into the book, and we just launched it in LA on November 15th.
At Harmony Gold, didn't you? You had it over
Harmony
there?
Gold, yes, it was great. But the story that, these stories that are written in the workshop, they do find their way out. And, several of us wrote these stories in the workshop, and mine included, and made its way into the book. So that's what I'm thinking for you as well. That what you write, what you wrote that day, and what you're writing in the room and writing now on your own, it makes its way into the world, into an anthology, into memoir. It's one way to get to it. There are a lot of ways to get to.
And people
to
should not be afraid to tell their story. I think a lot of times, people just don't know what to do. Even myself, who writes for a living, I didn't quite know how to get certain stories out, and I have lots of them. And this just sort of opened up so much for me, and this was just my way of getting in.
It.
And Lisa has her way, and the other Lisa, Goich, who just had to leave to go back to the Grammy office. She, there's so many different ways to go about writing one's memoirs or just an idea or a book, and you just sort of have to find your inner voice and find your way, and not be afraid to get it out there.
I think also we're in a time right now in our nation's history where people feel so kind of everything's so factionalized, and I think literature has always served to unite people. I think the reason that people look to comedies is for a little comedic relief, but it also literature and storytelling unite people, whether it's around a campfire in the prehistoric days or whether it's around a Kindle. People will talk about books that they're reading, and they'll talk about some great passage that they've read, or they'll read a short story aloud to someone if they think it's funny, or they'll listen to the radio. I remember being in New York, and I was so overwhelmed when I first moved there, and I was so young, and it was so different than anything I'd experienced. I'd never been to New York before I moved there.
With $250 you said in your pocket, right? That's not so bad. People have gone there with $250 in your pocket.
Yes, I moved there having never been there before with $250, and I didn't have a job. I had a card of someone who thought that they said, if you ever come to New York, look me up. And I looked him up. He's where Anderson Cooper now lives. It was an old firehouse in Murray Hill, and my first job was we helped create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the tenants and infrastructure of not only the museum but the events and the protocol for the induction ceremonies. But when I first moved there, I just listened to books on tape, or I listened to NPR, and they used to have a story hour on my commute to work. And I think just stories are calming. Literature, unites people in a way that, news headlines make people fearful in some ways.
There's no doubt. In fact, go ahead, but very, very quickly, because we're actually running out of time. Beth, do most people write in your workshop, just like Lisa's talking about? Do they write usually fiction or nonfiction? Because I noticed
most people in my workshop are writing memoir.
Right.
Yeah. Some people who are working on a novel will come in and they'll work on it. And I have one writer in Hawaii who writes only poetry. She's a gorgeous 82-year-old poet, and she's published.
Lovely.
And she's written 77 poems in the workshop. And
wow! Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So if people want to read about the workshop, they can go to my website if people are interested. It's called wakingupinhawaii.com. All one word, wakingupinhawaii.com. And
but you clearly don't just do it there. You're here in Los Angeles. You're traveling where else?
I do it in Hawaii, LA, Carmel. I've got one coming up in New York. I'm going back to Boston. I'm doing it all over the country.
Which is where
traveling with it as much as
because it's
I'm looking forward to working with you again in March.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And in between,
my piece was a memoir, but much of my life I've written for.
I'm so looking forward to reading your book, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for sitcoms. And I think we all bring whether it's a news show, or it's a talk show, or we all bring parts of our own life even to fiction.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Would you say, Beth, many times people like to write because it's cathartic for them, or they want to get their story out for other people? Like, why would you say is the main reason? The workshop
I think
we were
people come
in
because they have a story to write, and it starts out as being cathartic to them, and then it turns out to be a bigger piece, and it's worthy of going out into the world. So I think a number of the people who come in and start writing and finding their stories and accessing their voice, turn out to have a book, and many books.
And if I could give a little advice on that, if there's so many people in life, that will tell you no, some New York publisher, or, oh, that can't be done, and lots there is valor in if you've finished a product and getting other people to read it, and there's so many ways you can do that now. And I think young people are sometimes, feel like they have to do stuff for free. They have to write a blog, and then maybe magically it'll get noticed, or, But there's valor in having a product and having, people. There's value in your work, and so don't let people
Absolutely.
like an agent
there's so
or
many different ways to publish. That's right. In the
to
old
tell
days,
you
you had to
that
go out and
it
just
can't be
look for a
done.
publisher. That's right.
Say
You
that
can
again, Beth.
self-publish.
Beth, say that
there's
again.
Lots of ways to do it.
Yeah.
I said she's right. There's so many ways to do it. You don't have to, like this book, Shades of Blue. Amy Ferris has Field Press behind her, so whatever she writes, they'll pick it up. But I mean, sometimes you have to you self-publish, or you do something in the middle. Julie's books are being published by a really wonderful publisher in Hawaii, so that's kind of a middle. It is a publisher. She's not self-publishing, but it's not, it's not a major publisher. There are great different ways to go.
But so many times agents or that kind of thing will say, oh, there's no audience for that.
There are lots of
yeah,
ways to
that's right, and it's really completely different now than it used to be. And I was just thinking about.
I have a piece in a book called An Anthology of Babes. 36 Women Give Motherhood a Voice. The author is edited by Susie Banks Baum. It's a beautiful book. She went to a printer. She did it all on her own. It's had
That's
so
beautiful.
many press. It's gone through many printing. She made all her money back and more. She goes all over the country on, book tours and book signings. And you're looking at this gorgeous book, you'd have no idea originally, that she did it on her own. There's really no difference between picking up this book and picking up a book by, a major publisher in terms of how it looks.
Did you help her with that?
Yes.
Did you edit that with her?
No, I have a piece in it.
You have a piece in it. And what's the name of that again?
I have a piece in it called Riding on the Wave, about it's a story about my son. And again, written in the Writers' Workshop. She asked me to contribute to that. It's just an anthology I contributed to. But there are so many ways to get your book out now. It's just a completely different world, and it's really exciting.
Well, both of you.
And again, if it doesn't work as a book, you might end up writing a book, and then it becomes a portion of it becomes a magazine article, and then it becomes a television show, or there's just a lot of different ways to get stories out there. And I often think of Shakespeare or Chaucer, and they were telling stories. People still go to Shakespearean plays, and still revere his work, because
that'd be quite a TV series, Macbeth.
Lisa, exactly. Lisa makes such a good point, because the thing of the talking, the telling the stories, that's in terms of the workshop, I think that's a big part of what works. The reading it back is basically sitting in a circle and talking. In Hawaii, we call it talk story. You're telling the story. So it gives a whole different feel of community in the writing. And that's part of the reason we don't discuss it. We don't discuss it. There's something sacred about the room, about writing your story, your deepest story, and then sitting in a circle with other writers and reading, going around the room and reading, and just sitting with the story. Some of these stories are really hard. People are writing their truth. People are crying. People are laughing. And
pretty
it's exactly
intense. It was beautiful. Yeah.
That was the thing that was surprising to me, is I kind of thought my stories would be lean more, to a female audience, but men are buying it. They're buying it for the women in their lives, and they're buying it for themselves. And I think there's a lot of people right now that that look to literature to find like a commonality, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So really briefly, Lisa, because we only have a few seconds, what's your next, what are you doing? You're on a book tour, is that correct? Because I know that you were at a book signing, actually. And where was that?
I just had a book signing at the Learned Owl bookstore in Hudson, Ohio. And
wonderful.
It's a place where a lot of best-selling authors go. So I was really happy about that. And I'm supposed to go to New York on press tour, I think, next week.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm so excited that you had me on your show. It's such a good show, and you're such a ingratiating host.
Thank you.
You really need to know that.
Thank you so much. And the name of your book is, for everybody who's going to run out and buy.
Short and Shorter Stories, Musings on Life, Love, and Lust.
And you're gorgeous on the front
that's why the
cover.
guys are buying it.
That's why they're buying it. It's your picture in that short little skirt, the little red skirt. Lisa, you're gorgeous. And Beth,
I think they like the stories.
they like it all.
They do.
They like it all. And
I
then
hope I get to come to Hawaii and come to one of your
workshops.
I would love
your workshops. That would be lovely.
And Beth, what are you working on next? You're holding another workshop.
I'm going on the road. I've got a whole bunch of workshops coming up. I've got one in New York, then in Carmel, and then L.A. I'm editing a whole bunch of books for other writers, and I'm working on my memoir. Mm-hmm. And Friday night we're doing a reading of a screenplay that I edited. It's a beautiful award-winning screenplay by a writer in Hawaii, Brody Callender, and it's on the 15th draft. So
that is wonderful.
And we're having 18 actors in Hawaii get together, and we're going to sit around a table, again, sitting around the table, and we're going to read it. And I'm excited about that. But yeah, so I'm about to get back on the road and travel with the workshop.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for joining me. Beth, I'm going to be talking to you soon because I've got some prompts that I've got to work on. Lisa, I'll give you a call as well.
You do.
Thank you both for being here, and thanks everybody. There's another really great
I'm looking
edition.
forward to reading your work, Deborah.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to getting it out there. So fingers crossed, it'll happen. It's all in there.
Thank you so much for having me on too. I really appreciate it.
And I'll talk to you soon too. Maybe I'll give you a call a little bit. Beth and everybody, thanks for another edition. What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. See you next week.